If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hi folks, Carl Jones here from Electric Media Madness, joined today again by Dan Ryan. How you doing, mate?
Alright.
Good. We're here to review 3 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, which you watched them last night.
Yeah.
I watched them last night in a weird fashion because I kept falling asleep, which is not a discredit of Star Trek Voyager at all in the slightest, but I did need to rewatch them because it's been quite a while since I watched them, but they are great episodes, but we'll get into the whys and wherefores of that as we go along. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this was because there was a couple of reasons. One was I thought it would be interesting to have some Voyager content on the channel. You've only watched the pilot episode of Voyager, haven't you?
Yeah.
So
I'm basically a Voyager virgin.
Yeah, a Voyager virgin. So that was the principle. That was one of the reasons. Another was because having watched Picard, which has got a fair bit of 7 of 9 in it. I was interested in your take on 7 of 9. Granted, this is only a snapshot of 7 of 9. This is like our introduction. There's way more character development. I'm just interested to get your take on that, and I've got some thoughts about that, which I will not hold back on either. And also because I very much enjoyed, I know you did as well, when we talked about the Borg stories from Star Trek The Next Generation, so I thought it would be interesting to do another Borg video, talk about sort of where the Borg went. Because we did kind of touch on that a little bit, didn't we, in the Borg stories episode, Next Generation. We talked about, like First Contact, the film, and how it kind of unravelled the Borg a bit after that. But anyway, the three episodes that we're going to talk about is Scorpion Parts 1 and 2. And because it kind of continues the story a little bit after, is The Gift, the second episode of Season 4. Because as it leaves 7 of 9 introduction at the end of Part 2, she's kind of just lying there on her bed as a drone, but you see sort of like that process of sort of de-assimilation after in The Gift. So I'm very much of the mind that this is the last really good Borg story in the whole sort of Star Trek.
But what about Picard?
No.
What about the story of the XPs?
No, not having that.
The great story of the XPs.
It's interesting because that's something we can get to when we talk about Seven's de-assimilation. Because I did have some thoughts on how much harder it was on 7 compared to how Hugh is brought out of it in iBorg. But anyway, so we'll start with Scorpion Part 1, which is 7 of 9 absent because it's the last episode of Season 3. Some interesting things going on with behind the scenes with Voyager as well, which will remind me to come back to that, talking about Kess as well and things like that. We'll come back to that. But we start with Voyager finally hitting Borg space in the Delta Quadrant. And the Borg had turned up previously in an episode of Season 3, but they were kind of like a ship that had been sort of de-assimilated. And Chakotay was like with them, stranded there on the planet, and he had to help them, which explains why they use that cortical thing on Chakotay so he can link up to Seven's mind in Part 2. That's sort of a leftover from that story. And the Doctor talks about they've got some Borg parts, the Borg corpse that they found, so that's from those stories. But this is proper full-on Borg space. This is not a lone Borg cube, and I find it quite hilarious actually, because it's like, we'll be fine. We'll we'll have this tactical plan, and we'll use our torpedoes and our phasers and the shields, and we'll get through like millions of like Borg ships and thousands of Borg planets. We'll be fine. We'll just keep going. It's a bit sort of nonsensical, but they do actually, in fairness to the writers, they do have that discussion in the episode, don't they? Should we turn back? Should we go and find a planet and settle down in the Delta Quadrant? But they find this area of space that they think is devoid of Borg ships, so they're going to I think, we'll use that to get through. But then when they get there, they find out that, because you see a teaser of it in the beginning of the episode, don't you, that there's this race of aliens that are a lot more powerful than the Borg. Species 8472. The Borg are basically doing a runner. I mean, 15 Borg ships fly past Voyager at one point, don't they? And So that really is it, because for that story is basically trying to... Janeway decides that it's in both theirs and the Borg's best interest to ally against Species 8472 because they find Species 8472, one of the creatures, and its ship on a sort of wrecked Borg ship. It infects Harry Kim, doesn't it? It turns him all like tentacled and everything that. But because the Borg only learn anything by assimilation, and Starfleet do things differently, you know, they analyse and investigate and all that kind of thing, they've got a potential weapon to fight Species 8472.
Well, the first thing is just, it's really cool that they've got so much stronger than the Borg.
Yes.
Like, the whole time you're like, okay, nothing's going to be stronger than this. Like, just by concept, the Borg is kind of, like, undefeatable.
Yeah, redundant really as a story device, aren't they? Because we talked about that in the previous video, didn't we? That how can you bring them back?
And then they bring something along that just breaks through the wall and just smashes them.
Kind of riffing on the alien creature a bit from the alien films.
It was a bit, But it was a cool design.
But it was a cool design, For the time as well, with the limited CGI back then, you know, it looks good. It's a good creature.
Well, so another thing I've got jotted down is like a lot of the imagery in the episode is quite ahead of its time as well. Like you've got was it like a pile of Borg
corpse with all the skulls and the arms and all that all piled up. Yeah. And then it suitably shows the threat.
Yeah.
Of how malevolent they are, Species 8472.
And the Harry Kim, all over his face.
All the tentacle type
like
things, the veins and all that across his face and everything. Yeah. And the single tear down his cheek. Yeah. Did you see that when he was like, which is kind of a throwback to Picard when he was assimilated, but it's like the other side of it, isn't it? Yeah.
It's getting devoured.
Yeah, getting eaten alive inside out. Yeah. Very much so. That's what the Doctor actually says. That
it's quite the cliffhanger at the end. As well. They just destroy a planet.
Yeah. That was something that I was going to mention before. Is that you see these bioships, you see them firing and they're blasting at the Borg ships and all that, but then they, like 6 or 7 of them, I can't remember exactly. I mean, they come along, and then all of a sudden they just fire these beams at each other. There's one in the middle, and it goes like, and there's massive sort of phaser thing rips the planet to bits.
It just annihilates, and then the episode just ends.
Ends there, with that Borg ship splattered with sort of molten rock from the planet, towing Voyager along
with Janeway on the Borg
cube as well. Yeah, I mean, I do think that is. It's not quite as good, but it's on a par with I Am Locutus of Borg. You know? It really leaves you on a great cliffhanger there.
Just like, okay, all right,
We talked about the Orville for another video that we recorded a while back during the
lockdown.
But we also talked about the writers being quite an alumni of Star Trek, and the 2 writers of these 3 episodes are the main guys on the Orville.
Oh, right, okay.
Joe Menosky and Brannon Braga, you know, they're alongside Seth MacFarlane on the Orville. Brannon Braga and Joe Menosky co-wrote the 2-parter. And Joe Menosky wrote The Gift. So you get that vibe, actually. I couldn't help but think, as I was watching it, in my sleepy state, I kept thinking about the comparisons with the Orville. Even the look of, like, Janeway's ready room is very similar to Captain Mercer's office. Yeah. You know, and the look of the ship, the greys and the silvers and the carpets and all that. And I'm thinking, Brannon Braga took quite a bit of that over with... Obviously, it was Seth MacFarlane's baby, you know, but it's great writing, brilliant writing.
Well, thinking of a story where the Borg are forced to work with the Federation.
Yeah. That's a good segue into the story goes with episode 2, because a lot crammed into this story. Not only have you got the introduction of 7 of 9, which we'll come to in a minute, but you've got this idea of Chakotay and Janeway pitted against each other. Which doesn't happen very often in the series, but it does come up from time to time. There's another 2-parter, Equinox, end of season 5, where it's very similar kind of thing. But Janeway's convinced that she can make this deal with the Borg work. And Chakotay's like, I know I've been part of the hive mind for a short while. I know what they're like. You can't make these kinds of deals with them. And in part 1, he tells the story, which is where the episode title comes from. The scorpion walking along the bank of the river, and he wants to go across, but he can't, and he sees a fox, and he asks the fox to carry him on his back, and the fox says, no, you know, you'll sting me and you'll drown. And he says, well, no, I won't, because, we go across, I'll drown as well. So they go across, and the scorpion stings him, and he says, what'd you do that for? We're going to drown now. And he says, I can't help it, it's in my nature. Which is exactly, I mean, it's a bit of a cliched little story, but it proves the point perfectly. This is what the Borg are, and that is exactly what happens in part 2, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And Chakotay was right. Janeway was actually wrong in this case.
Yeah.
Her faith in their ability to, the high and mighty ideals of the Federation, which is perhaps a good thing because of Chakotay having abandoned Starfleet and then become part of the Marquis. Yeah. He's got a bit more of a cynical take on these kinds of things, So and with his experiences as well with the Borg, he's like, no, this isn't going to work. And Janeway does say to him, you waited until I was in a coma or whatever to just completely abandon, because he says, like, we'll give them the nanoprobes, drop them off at the planet, the Borg, and let them fight it out, and we'll just piss off and leave them to it, Yeah. But that doesn't go quite that way, does it?
No.
Because we have the introduction, because initially they want to sort of like slightly assimilate Janeway and Tuvok on the Borg ship.
Kind of,
yeah. Put this transceiver thing in and all that, and Janeway says, we have our individuality intact, blah blah blah, and all that. Could you choose a representative like you did with Picard as Locutus? And we see 7 of 9 then, and she's like, we find out that she was human, assimilated at quite a young age, about 5, 6 years old, something, and she's been a Borg ever since, completely lost any semblance of her humanity at this point. And she's very cold and ruthless, and matter of fact, this is war. But then you find out that the Borg actually initiated as well, which is even weirder, because it's like in their quest for technology and ways to assimilate things, it's like they opened the cage to the lion's den, didn't they really? Because they couldn't assimilate Species 8472, and it all went horribly, horribly wrong. Now they've got this opportunity to develop these weapons, which they do. 7 tries to sort of take over the ship briefly, and they open the airlock and space the Borg, apart from her. She manages to stay on board, and they open up a quantum singularity and go into Species 8472's realm. It works, and they retreat, and then 7 says like, I'm taking you back to the Borg now, you will be assimilated, blah 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 blah, and they disconnect her from the hive at the end. She's broken off. They are still flying through Borg space at this point, but 7's now sort of disconnected from... so anything you want to say about that before we go into the gift?
There's a lot of cool shit in this episode.
Yeah. I think Voyager was pretty much over to CGI at that point.
Yeah.
And it's because you and I are big fans of Babylon 5. And when Babylon 5 started with its CGI, because they were completely CGI, it looked terrible in those first season, But very rapidly, though, it got. You look at some of the stuff from season 3, season 4 onwards. It actually looks pretty damn good. It's still tame compared to today. But as I understand it, I think one of the effects companies that was working on Babylon 5 moved over to Voyager around about that point, or vice versa, something like that. So you do see the quality of the CGI at that point. It was very good, and I think Voyager was even a CGI at that point then, because you see like all the Borg, because they partly assimilate Voyager, don't they? They put some Borg bits on it and all that for the weapons systems and all that.
And that looks pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
Considering Janeway's in a coma, like half the episode, she's really, really good in this episode.
Yes, she is.
She's like, yo, I'm the captain, do not fuck with me.
Yeah.
Do not fuck with me.
Yeah, she lays it down thick with Chakotay, doesn't she? And with 7 as well. She, despite the fact that she must know in the back of her mind that this deal is doomed, but she's nevertheless she stands her ground.
I am the captain. You will do this.
Yeah. And the bargaining chip as well is like, we'll put all the information about the technology that the Borg need into the Doctor,
and we'll just wipe
you if they try to. And she does make a point of saying, well, I'm hoping it won't come to that, but it won't come to that. But this is our place in the hole. And then in part 2, Chakotay says, talking to the Doctor about it, and he says, "Don't worry, I'll delete my program at the first sign of it." Well, and he goes, "Well, maybe not the first sign of it." Which are some funny moments in there as well, isn't there, with the Doctor and stuff like that? Yeah.
But the big thing here is like seeing them trying to work with a Borg.
Yeah.
Because that's something new.
Yeah. And my thinking is with this is you could never really have, and this is fundamentally what we've said in the Borg stories for Next Generation, is that there's only so far you can go with the Borg stories before you kind of defang them. And this was the last time that you could actually make the Borg be a threat But inevitably you had to put something more powerful in there to make that Borg story work, because it wouldn't have worked. And every time subsequently in Voyager, when they revisited the Borg on that level, like fleets, Borg ship cubes, the Borg Queen, all that, it just seems so contrived and so easy that they get out of it every time. In one case, they just beam a photon torpedo onto a Borg ship and blow it up.
Oh, okay.
It's so easy that it becomes, it's just the Borg just completely lose their mojo as they go on. So,
that's unfortunate.
But I think this is the last time that you really see them as sort of still the big bad threat. But you couldn't, again, like I say, you couldn't have told this story without Species 8472 in. And one of the sad things about Species 8472 as well is that, and it kind of proves the point, in creating something as powerful as the Borg, but then you can't use them because they're too powerful. Then they create something even more powerful, and they couldn't use Species 8472 then either.
Did they not use them
Well,
again?
they did use them. I think they came back for about 3 or 4 episodes. No, I apologise. No, you briefly see them, but they're 2 main stories. And the second one, it's a lone creature on its own, and then the next one, and then the one after that, they have them have a changeling type ability, turn into humans, and they replicate Starfleet headquarters on this space station, getting ready to invade the Federation. But then they make friends with them.
Oh, okay.
At the end.
That's a bit.
And say, Starfleet's we're not a threat to you, we won't do anything harmful to you, we don't want to wage war on you and all that. That was set up because of the original episode I was talking about, Equinox, at the end of season 5. The threat in that was originally going to be Species 8472, because it turned out that there was another Starfleet ship in the Delta Quadrant that was using Species 8472 for nefarious reasons. And that was why they perceived the Federation to be a threat, based on their experiences with this other starship.
Oh, right, yeah.
I don't know what the creative decision was for this, but they nixed Species 8472 and they changed it to another alien race in that 2-part story. Which kind of gutted that 2-part story, because it would have been so much better if it had been Species 8472. But that's it. You never really see them again after that. They make friends with them, and that's that.
Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. I mean, I suppose you can't use them too much.
Yeah, but that's the point I was making, is that you make these races too powerful.
Just insta-kill a planet. You can't really use them too.
The only other thing you can do is make, like what they do with the Dominion in Deep Space Nine, is you have to have everybody have this powerful alliance of races fighting them en masse numbers.
But you can't really do that.
But you can't do that with Voyager, because it's one ship, So yeah. So anything else you wanted to say about that? I mean, it's...
The only other thing is, having the Borg on the ship with them.
Yeah.
And them trying to cope with it.
Yeah.
That's very neat.
And that kind of does play out further down the line, because they leave the Borg alcoves so that Seven can regenerate. We'll come to that when we talk about the gift. But also they inherit a group of Borg children in season 6. So they get to use the alcoves as well with Seven. So that was kind of a nifty touch, really, that they left them all intact. They could have just left one for her. But so Seven's disconnected from the Borg, and she's just lying there on a bio bed at the end. You don't know where this is going to go, but you do with the gift, because the gift is a weird little two-handed story. It's, as I call it, Hello Seven, Goodbye Kes. And the reason for that was because something had gone on behind the scenes. They wanted to revamp Voyager a little bit. And it was mentioned, and I think it was Brannon Braga. I mean, he certainly got his wish in many, many ways, because he actually ended up dating Jeri Ryan for a number of years as well. So he got it made, But I think it was this suggestion of a Borg babe, for want of a better way of putting it. A bit of TNA, like in a soft sort of way. Something that would appeal to the male viewer of a certain age, not a bad thing, I know that's not politically correct to say that nowadays, but it did the trick. I mean, even Kate Mulgrew herself said at the time, I mean, she notoriously did not get on with Jeri Ryan at all on the making of the show, but she did say in many interviews, I saw her and I just looked at her and I thought, our ratings are going to go right up now. So, even Kate Mulgrew said that. We've got it made, and it did. It benefited the show very, very much for a year or two. Anyway, it did. Granted, I mean, a friend of mine who watched a number of years back watched Voyager said that it became the 7 of 9 show, because whenever anything went wrong on the ship, Seven of Nine would solve the problem, because she's basically the most intelligent person in the universe. She's got all these knowledge of the Borg in her brain. So she became quite an annoying character for some people. Some people have called her like she suffers from Wesley Crusher syndrome. Shut up, Wesley. In Next Generation, you've seen the meme, haven't you? Shut up, Wesley. Like the brightest, the problem solving. I mean, I'd never had an issue with that. I mean, I never had that much of an issue with Wesley Crusher. I fell into the middle camp, and I liked Seven of Nine. I thought, even though she did have a lot of stories in season 4 and 5. Her character was brilliant, and it was handled so well. This journey from complete disconnected from your humanity and regaining it again, coming back. So that's a good segue into the gift. We get a touch of that here because the Borg components are starting to fail, so they start removing them and all that kind of thing. And she just desperately wants to get back to the Borg again. That's all she wants, Janeway says to her, look, you're going to help us. She says, you will comply. You're going to help us remove all these Borg bits from the ship and all that, and help us to, get the ship running properly again. She agrees to this, but then she sees an opportunity to sort of hijack the communication systems and send a message to the Borg. But then Kes stops it from happening because Kes has been developing her telepathic and sort of telekinetic abilities, and she's starting to become like a Marvel character now, isn't she? Like a superhero. There's like a Borg component in Seven's brain that's going to kill her, and she looks inside her head and
just sort of disintegrates it.
Yeah. And then when she's trying to send the message, she creates this like wave of energy through the ship, and it just knocks Seven back, and she's like going through a state of hyper evolution. And that's where the two stories converge at the end, really, because Seven finally starts to get her first glimpses of humanity. Janeway shows her a photograph of Annika Hansen, that was her real name as a child, and that. And she says, and she gets really upset, doesn't she? Seven, and said like, the voices are gone. I'm one now, which is like we talked about Hugh. In I Know I Borg in Next Generation, but a much harder journey here. It's amazing how quickly Hugh became just like accepting of being an individual.
Yeah, it was really quick.
But this is a hard road for Seven, and it doesn't end there. I mean, it takes, arguably, this is one of the reasons why people had a problem with Seven's depiction in Picard, because she never really completely regains her humanity. She gets very close to it, but arguably she's still very detached. It's almost like she takes some pride in the fact that she was a Borg.
Yeah.
We are Borg, that's it adds to everything, But she ultimately becomes sort of de-Borgified at the end, and she looks human, and the Doctor makes a joke about stimulating her hair follicles, which is a vicarious experience for him because he's nearly bald. I always say that. I always use that line with people. So that's a vicarious experience for me. That is with my. One of the things Janeway said to her was, "Can you remember the things about when you were Annika? Where did you go to school? What was your favourite colour?" And Seven says to her at the end, "Red."
Yeah.
Yes, that was my favourite colour. So you see a glimpse of that. But running alongside this, we have Kes, who becomes like uber powerful.
Yeah, they're going in like polar opposite directions. One's on the path to becoming human, the other's on the path to being like God.
Yeah, and Janeway says that to Tuvok, doesn't she? She says, "I've got a Borg who wants to be, who's afraid of becoming less than you're going to conquer him." And she says, "Here's to Vulcan." That kind of thing. Yeah. So they basically just dump her on a shuttle at the end, Kes.
Yeah.
She becomes hyper evolved, and she says, "My gift to you," and she kicks Voyager 10,000 light years closer to home, completely clear of Borg space, which is a plot device. It gets them out of Borg space very, very quickly and keeps them safe. But it does what it needed to do for that story. So you have Seven now part of the crew, and Kes is gone. Kes does come back for one episode later in the series. It is a very sad thing, really, that what happened, because I'm not going to get into any specific details here, but the Jennifer Lean who played Kes, I mean, she had a hard road. She got dealt a very bad hand. I mean, she would have happily have stayed on Voyager, I think. She didn't want to leave, but she was sacked to make way for Jeri Ryan, 7 of 9, because they couldn't afford to pay for an extra, it was just practical money, And they also argued that Kes's character wasn't exactly the easiest character to write for. She didn't have many episodes in her 3 years on the show. She was arguably a hard character to write for. But what's interesting is when she did have episodes of her own, they were amongst some of the best Voyager episodes. They're great episodes. Warlord from season 3, Coldfire from season 2, Illusion from season 1 as well, and it's not particularly fondly remembered episode for some fans, but it was a great episode. So she got a bum rap, the actress did, and the character, and the actress very much. All I will say is think of Jake Lloyd in The Phantom Menace. Yeah.
Okay.
Her life went completely off the rails. Yeah. I mean, people. I'm not going to talk anything about it here, but go and do a Wikipedia search on. I don't ever like to recommend Wikipedia to anybody.
That didn't go too well.
Her life just. And it's a shame. It really is a shame because she was a really good actress, and she played that character really, really well. I liked Kes as a character. I liked Seven as well, but it would have been nice to have seen the pair. You know, both of them to be on for the remainder of the show. So I've rattled on. So let's get to your thoughts on the GIF now then.
Well, the best bit of it is Jeri Ryan.
Yeah.
Like she does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, she steals the show, doesn't she?
Really, like easily this episode.
Yeah. Which is, I just wanted to say, it's a shame for Kes's goodbye. Because it does overshadow that.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But yeah, go on.
Because she acts really well in this.
Yeah.
That because it's a bit disorienting because like how cold she is. Like you would expect that if they completely disconnected her, she'd be kind of like she is in Picard a bit, but without the.
I know because you haven't seen
the stuff at the end.
Yeah.
So it's like that's how you'd think that she'd be.
Yes.
But the fact that it's like many years later that she's like that, but she wasn't before, is quite disorienting. Because
what happens with her is she seems to get. I find in the first few episodes of season 4, she gets a lot of humanity back very, very quickly. She starts like smirking a lot and things like that, and she's sort of half joking with people a little bit, and then after a few episodes, they pulled it right back again.
Yeah.
And they made her very quite cold and very stoic and very sort of rational and matter of fact about things. Almost like a Vulcan in a way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because her relationship with Tuvok becomes quite strong then because they've got very similar kind of perspectives on for the rest of the series. But you see the humanity trickling through more and more. It's like a slow build. But even when you get to the end of Voyager is nowhere near nothing compared to what the character. It's almost like Jeri Ryan's playing a new character called Seven.
It's weird in Picard because it's like half the time she's like really emotional and the other stuff, and then other times like she has no humanity at all. There's like no in between them. But we shouldn't get sidetracked too much from Picard.
Well, one of the things I do want to say, because I do want to point this out, because in case we never do get to talk about Voyager again, I mean, I'm hoping we will do. But
I hope so, yeah.
But one of the things I do want to say in this video, it's going to be a very, very controversial thing to say, but I am going to say it. The portrayal of Seven as being, well, let's just say, for the sake of arguments, bisexual. In which absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. There doesn't seem to be any foreshadowing of that whatsoever in Voyager, which is one of the issues people did have with that. It's like, where was the groundwork for that character development in Picard?
Well, there weren't really any foreshadowing in Picard.
No, there wasn't.
It just sort of happened. And you're like, oh, all right.
Yeah. And one of the examples I point to is there's an episode in season 5 called "Someone to Watch Over Me," where Seven decides that she wants to explore her sexuality. And her romance and all that kind of thing. She goes through the crew manifest to find a suitable suitor, somebody to date, to go out on a date with, right? Now, bearing in mind there's like 120 crew members on Voyager or something like that, a mix of male, female and other species as well, right? She picks 2 men, and she says nobody else is suitable for her. Now, you could argue that maybe she did have a sexual, she did have a sexual attraction to women, but none of them met the criteria on Voyager, or she didn't have a bisexual tendency, or at that point in the series, but she does. Again, no problem. Just show the arc, show the journey, show the journey from there.
That's a big problem with New Trek. There's not really a journey for
absolutely.
things. Things just sort of happen. It's like, oh, all right then.
And it's very, very important here to, and sometimes we talk about certain things and we think they might be a bit controversial for YouTube, and we curb what we say, and maybe, nothing offensive or anything like that. But this is something that I very much intend to be left into this video, because I think it's a very, very important point to make. This is nothing to do with LGBTQ or anything like that. This is about showing the character arcs.
Character progression,
we've had representation of different types of sexuality throughout Star Trek, and certainly in what I call pre-Kurtzman Trek, it's handled very, very well. It's shown how that that character gets to that point and makes those life choices or whatever, and has those romantic relationships or whatever. But it just seems to completely foreign. I wonder sometimes if it was just, with Picard, it was just, Seven is great. People like Seven. Jeri Ryan's gorgeous. We'll have that. Have a bit of that. She's very popular with it. And that's it. That's all they took. They used that, which is a disservice to the character and to the actress. Yeah. It feels like they didn't take anything of the characters. 4 years on Voyager.
Just the name and the actress.
Just the name and the actress. Yeah. Oh, the fact that she was an ex-Borg. That's it. That's pretty much it. And again, I think when we talked about Picard, yes, character. People. Everybody changes in life. 10 years, 20 years down the line, a person can be completely unrecognisable to what they were. Set some of the framework up for it.
Just throw in the occasional flirty joke or something like that.
Yeah. So,
or like a cheeky little wink here and there. Just something to...
just something that, establishes...
Because that...
And we can that's what that character is.
Because in Picard, that was really jarring. Cause
it was.
It's like... Yeah. It just happened. You're like... They just do it. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
That's the biggest plot
twist
of the show.
I mean, they had very few. Raffi and Seven had very few scenes together. Anyway.
I know, that was what made it even weirder.
So I can't. It's unless basically she just like I like you. I've been watching you from a distance.
I'm
down. But even that, just put that's what I'm like now. That's what Seven is like now. I'm like that. Whether you think that's a good way to take the character or not, it doesn't really matter, but just at least establish it.
They just chucked it in as something just to chuck in.
Yeah.
And they didn't think, let's build this up.
Yeah. Do the work. Be a good writer, which clearly those people aren't. But going back to what we were originally saying, this is what you see with these 3 stories. You see some good, solid writing. Jeri Ryan is a brilliant actress, and consistently as the series goes on, she has some of the best moments in Voyager in terms of the portrayals of Seven and the torture that she's gone through in reclaiming her humanity again. It's brilliant actress. That's another thing, because I felt she was her acting skills were very underused in Picard. With again, you've got all that history to go back on and look at in Voyager. And
a lot of it was just gungo bang.
Yeah. Vaporising people. And, yeah, absolutely. So I do feel that was a really important point to make. Good writing, please. That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
It's not about any. It's not and I'm sure there'll be people out there accused of histonisms and whatnot. It's screw your head right on, people. This is we're talking about writing here and being true to the character arcs. It's nothing more than that. So, anything else you wanted to say about the gift?
We've covered everything.
Yeah. So if there's not anything more, do you want to rate them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then. So we'll start with Scorpion Part 1.
So I kind of kept comparing this to Best of Both Worlds. Even though it's not the same, it's got a sort of similar feel.
It follows a very similar structure, actually. Yeah.
But in comparison, I think it's not quite as good as Best of... So I gave Part 1 a 9.
Right, okay. It's a 9 for me as well.
Yeah. Part 2, for me, conceptually, it's really good. But I don't think it's quite as good as the first part.
And again, you saying about Best of Both Worlds, it's a very similar thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It falls slightly short of being able to... and it ties things up a little bit too quickly.
Yeah.
And you know how they make the mental contact with Picard at the end? He's fighting through it. His humanity's there underneath. It's the same thing with Seven at the end. It's like
the last sort of 10 minutes.
Yeah, very similar.
And I think this maybe would have benefited from having a part 3 as well, and maybe extending it and putting a bit of the gift into it as well.
They could have done that very easily, and made that really good, solid 3-part story. Yeah, absolutely.
But I gave this one 8.5.
Okay, Yeah, 8 for me.
Yeah.
And The Gift.
The Gift, I gave an 8.
Right. Okay.
I enjoyed it a lot, but it hasn't got some of the stuff. Like, when it wasn't about the Seven stuff, the rest I didn't really enjoy as much.
But
so it left me wanting more of that.
Yeah, and I also wonder if maybe that's because you hadn't really seen Voyager, so you're not familiar with the arc of Kes.
That's true, yeah.
Her relationship with the Doctor and her relationship with Tuvok and all that. So, as a long-time viewer of it, you know, I had that.
Yeah.
So, for me, I found some really touching things in that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give The Gift a 9.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it was a nice... It's a shame, but it was a nice send-off for it. Fell short because it was overshadowed by... But again, good stuff in both parts, you know. So
I missed that bit. I still found it interesting, but I missed the whole arc, so it just was like...
So yeah, I mean, it's great to be able to finally look at some of the Voyager stuff, and I'm glad we did, because so far only doing the pilot with the pilot episodes video that we did. Hopefully we will revisit the series, because there are some fantastic episodes in Voyager. There really are. Yeah. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me for doing this video. I've really enjoyed it, and we hope you've enjoyed it as well. And if you have, please don't forget to like the video, share it about if you can, or even subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And Dan and I will see you again very, very soon. Take care.
Yes, au revoir.